What's up guys, I'm Chirag and welcome to part 6 of the tutorial series on Amazon WebSocket API Gateway tutorial. In the previous tutorial, we have created the custom route that is on message as you can see on my screen, followed by its invocation using payload or messages, right? And now in this tutorial, I will take you through on how to pass or send the message from the server to the client, right? So when I say from server to the client, it's going to be sending of a message from server to the connected clients, right? So assuming that you already have logged in into AWS Management Console and then navigate to API Gateway and open the API endpoint or the API Gateway that you have created throughout this tutorial, right? So I'm within WebSocket tutorial API, and as you can see on my screen, we had created on message route, right? So let's go to stages, select the deployment stage. So earlier what we had, so let's copy this WebSocket URL and navigate to terminal and say ws get -c followed by the WebSocket URL, right? And now it's connected. So earlier what we were doing was passing a payload or message saying action colon on message, and then we were getting some response saying on message route invoked, right? So this looks like the request and response model, right? But it's actually not, but it's look like, right? So we are sending some request and we are getting some response. Now how we can post or send the message independently without sending any request from server to client, right? So that's what we are going to cover in this tutorial. So now to push the message or to send the message from server independently, it requires connection ID, right? So what we will do first is we will go ahead and configure the lambda function that is on message to return the connection ID, right? So go back to AWS Management Console, navigate to routes, select the custom route that is on message in my case, and on the very right you will see this lambda on message, right? Or whatever the lambda function that you have integrated. So click on that. So that will open the integrated lambda function in a new tab. Now once you are within that lambda function, navigate to the code panel, that is function code. Right now, instead of json.dumps on message route invoked, we will pass on the connection ID from here, right? So we will get the connection ID within event. We will fetch that connection ID from event and we will pass on as a response, right? So we will say event of request context, mind the caps, right? So event of request context dot get connection ID, right? So now this will return as the connection ID. So let's save this and try to reinvoke it. So let's say action on message, and as you can see, now we have the connection ID instead of the custom message that we were receiving earlier, right? So that was on message route invoked, and now we are getting the connection ID. So connection ID is important to send the message from server to client, right? So now we have the connection ID. Now as the next step, what we will do is we will go ahead and create a new lambda function that will basically push the message to the connected clients, right? So obviously we have to copy and paste the connection ID within that lambda function at this point of time to send the message, right? So go back to lambda management console and say create function from the top right corner. Give it a function name. So I will say send message probably. Select runtime as Python 3.8 within permission. We will choose an existing role that we have created in part 1 or part 2 of this tutorial series, that is WebSocket underscore lambda, and finally say create function. Right now, once the lambda function is created, navigate to function code. Now here we are going to write few lines of code. So the very first thing is that we will require the backend URL, right? So we will say URL equal to, so from where we will get the backend URL. So for that, navigate to API Gateway, click on stages, select the deployment stage and copy the connection URL, right? So this is what we will require. So basically this is also known as the backend URL, right? So paste that URL over here, remove @connection and say save. Right now we have the backend URL. Apart from that, we will require Boto3. So say import Boto3, because we are going to use Boto3 to push or send the message from server to client, right? So now post defining the URL, we will define the Boto3 client for API Gateway Management API, right? So that's going to be client equal to Boto3.client, followed by the service name, that's API Gateway Management API, followed by the backend or the connection URL, right? So that's going to be the endpoint URL. So endpoint underscore URL equal to URL, right? So now we have URL, we have defined the Boto3 client. Let's save this first. Now we will say we want to send a message saying message equal to message hello from server, right? So we want to send this message to the connected client, right? Now to send the message, we will say response equal to client. So that's referring to line number 6, that is Boto3 client of API Gateway Management API, right? So client dot, it have a method saying post underscore to underscore connection, right? Now within post underscore to underscore connection, we have to pass on few parameters. So that's going to be the connection ID. So that's connection ID, mind the caps, equal to, for now we are going to copy and paste this connection ID. So copy this, paste it over here. Post connection ID, we will define the message that we want to send. So that's going to be data equal to JSON dot dumps followed by message variable, right? So message we have defined on line number 8, and I think we are done with that. So we will say save, right? So let's go back to terminal. So right now we are here. Now when I say test the function, we should receive a message over here saying hello from server, right? So let's click on test, define event. I will say T, say create. Now again test the function. It will throw an error, I guess, and yes, it will say access denied. Oh yes. So it's saying access denied exception because this lambda function don't have permission to push the message or invoke the API endpoint, right? So for that we have to add a permission to the IAM role, right? So scroll down to permission, click on this role name, that is WebSocket underscore lambda. Now here we have to attach one permission saying, so once you are there, click on attach permission and say API Gateway. So select the API Gateway invoke full access. So that is Amazon API Gateway invoke full access, and say attach policy. Right. So let me reload this lambda function. Now go back to configuration. So now let's try to test or run this lambda function again. So click on test. So it says gone exception. I think the connection is timeout. So let's see. If I say on message, I think the connection is being terminated. So let's try to reconnect. Pass on action as on message, enter. Now we have another connection ID. Let's copy this. So when you receive gone exception, it means the connection is terminated or timed out, right? So let's replace this connection ID. Say save and click on test again. And now I think it ran successfully. Let's go back to terminal and check. So now as you can see, we have a message from the server saying hello from server, right? So I can test it again. And we will have again another message, as you can see, hello from server, right? So this is how you can independently post the message from server to client using connection ID, right? Without any request response kind of model, right? So now this is one. Now, as I said in the previous tutorial, I will show you some sort of conversation type of thing, right? So let's go back to lambda function. We will leave this send message lambda function as it is, or maybe we will close this IAM management console. Go back to API Gateway, click on routes, select the custom route that you have created, open the onMessage lambda function. So here on GitHub, I have posted a code for this. So I'm going to copy and paste this code, and after that I will quickly take you through this code, what exactly it does. So let me first copy this, go back to on message. I will replace this, and finally I will say save. Now starting from import statement, here we are using JSON and Boto3, right? Finally on line number 11, we have to define the connection URL or the backend URL. So let's go back to API Gateway, click on stages, select the deployment stage. Let's copy this connection URL and paste it over here. Remove @connection and save this. Now this URL and Boto3 client that is on line number 12 is similar to what we did in the send message lambda function, right? So here we have an URL on line number 12. We are defining Boto3 client, that is API Gateway Management API, followed by the endpoint URL, right? So moving along. Now on line number 17, we are fetching the connection ID from the event. Now on line number 20, we are loading the JSON message that we are receiving from the client from event, right? On line number 23, we will check if message as a key or message as a parameter exists within the payload or not. If it exists, then we will fetch the message sent by the client, right? Now here I have defined some fixed value. So here I am assuming that the client will send hello, then how are you, right? So this is basically the simulation kind of thing. This might not be useful in the real world, but I just want to give you an idea that how we can use these things, right? So if we are receiving hello from the client, then we want to respond from the server saying hello from server. And here we have post underscore message as a method which accepts two parameters, that is connection ID and the message that we want to send from the server to the client, right? So if I scroll down on line number 59, I have defined this method or the function that is post underscore message, which accepts connection ID and message as a parameter. And then on line number 60, it is similar to what we defined in send message lambda function, right? So it's Boto3 client, that is gateway API, followed by the method that is post to connection, which accepts two parameters, that is connection ID and the data or the message that we want to send to the client, right? So that's post message function or the method. And then once we send the message to the client, we are returning status code 200 and that's it, right? And similar, it's if and else condition. If we receive how are you, then it will return server is fine, how are you? And when client will say good, then it will return a message saying great, it's nice talking to you. And then finally on line number 44, we are terminating or closing the connection from the server itself, right? So there is a function called delete underscore function which accepts connection ID as a parameter to terminate the connection, right? So we will see these things in action, right? So now we have defined the lambda function. Let's go back to terminal. Let's reconnect. So here we will pass on the parameter saying action. Now action is our route selection expression. So what we want to call, which route we want to call, that is on message. And what you want to pass, what you want to say. So I will say I want to send a message to the server saying hello and say enter. Now we got the response saying hello from server. Now again I want to respond back saying how are you? So it says server is fine, how are you, right? So now again I will say good. So it returned great, it's nice talking to you, and the connection is closed normally, right? So this connection is being terminated or closed from this server, right? So likewise by pressing Ctrl C, the client can close the connection with this server, right? So where these things can be helpful. So maybe let's try one more thing. We'll open two more terminals. Let's say we want to broadcast some message to the connected clients, right? So what we are going to do is we are going to connect to the WebSocket API from all the three terminals, right? So I will copy this command and I will execute it from all the terminal, right? But before that, we will require connection ID from the server, right? So we will say Control Z, right? So what this will do is it will return the connection ID, right? So I'm just trying to show you a demo that how we can send a single message to multiple connected clients, right? So what this will do is it will send the connection ID as a response, right? So now we are going to connect from all the three terminals. So let me connect. Let me clear this. Right now we are connected from 3 terminals, right? Now I will say action on message, right? I will pass this payload or message from all the 3 connection, and it will give me the connection ID. So you can notice that all the connection ID is unique, right? Now we will go back to our lambda function, that is send message, that we have created a while ago. So go to send message. Now here we will say connection ID equal to, we will paste all the 3 connection ID over here. So copy, paste, copy, paste, finally the third one, and paste, right? Now we will loop on this connection ID. So we have defined connection ID as a list. So I will say for connection in connection ID colon, and within for loop I will say post to connection. Now instead of static connection ID, I will say connection, and finally save this function. Right, so here we have 3 connection open, and we want to broadcast or send the message to all the connected clients, right? So what I will do is I will simply say test, and the execution is successful. Let's go to terminal, and now as you can see, all the connected clients have received a message saying message hello from server, right? So this is how you can also broadcast the message to multiple connected clients, right? So for example, there is some real-time dashboard, and suddenly you want to post some update regarding, so for example, we have a Sensex dashboard running on, and there is sudden drop in some share price or whatever, right? And you want to alert to all the users who are currently connected, right? So you can use this functionality to send a message to all the connected clients, or send an alert to all the connected clients like this, right? Now here we have a problem, right? So the problem is that we cannot copy and paste the connection ID in order to send messages to client from server, right? So to resolve this, we need to store the connection ID somewhere temporarily, right? So it should be like when the client is connected to the server or the WebSocket API, we need to store that connection ID temporarily, and once the client disconnects, the connection ID should be deleted automatically from wherever we have stored that, right? So to address this issue, we will require some storage or temporary storage, right? So that can be a DynamoDB, I guess. So well, that is something I would like to cover in the next tutorial, right? So I hope this doesn't sound confusing and overwhelming, right? I mean, this tutorial doesn't sound like that, right? So we will go back to on message finally. I will say Control Z or Control Shift Z, right? We will save this lambda function as this conversation messages, right? So maybe in the next tutorial we might require to edit this lambda function. We will do that at that point of time, right? So if you are looking for this code, you can find the link in the description, right? So I have posted this code on GitHub, right? And finally, well, that's it for this tutorial. And as usual, if you want me to do a tutorial on any use case or service, then please leave them below, and I will try my best to come up with a tutorial as soon as possible. And if you have any queries or comments, then again please leave them below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel, and see you next time.